whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere aki nei, have we done it? Our rowers yelled as they stormed the finish line. Hell yes, it's gold, glorious gold.
It's amazing. We knew that they had it in them, but you just never know what's going to happen on the day, so they deserve every minute of it.
We're live to Tokyo to indulge in some glittery goodness. In other news, a mercy dash from Fiji to Auckland. A UN worker is seriously ill with COVID-19 and is being evacuated here after a U-turn by New Zealand health officials. Are you being fleeced on the food shop? Well, the verdict is in. Oranga Tamariki says sorry for keeping a perfectly healthy child in hospital for 9 weeks. And every dog has its day. We've got the exact date.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora ko Susana Leata with DNA. Oranga Tamariki has apologised for leaving a child in a hospital for 9 weeks because it couldn't find a place for them. In documents posted online by the cyber attackers who targeted the Waikato DHB, staff say the child had no medical reason for being in hospital. Marnie Dunlop reports.
Oranga Tamariki has confirmed it did receive a complaint from the DHB. A spokesperson, Glenys Sandland, says she knows the ministry didn't do the best for the child and that's unacceptable. It has apologised to the staff concerned and offered a meeting. Ms Sandland says Oranga Tamariki is limited in what it can say for privacy reasons and will not provide an interview.
The Minister for Children, Kelvin Davis, says he has asked the ministry for a briefing. New Zealand has won its first gold medal of the Olympics. Clay Wilson reports from Tokyo on the victory of rowers Kerry Gowler and Grace Prendergast in the women's pair.
The two-time world champions went into the final as favourites, having posted a world best time in winning their semi-final. And they looked like champions, turning in a very controlled performance. They started well and were second at the 1,000-metre halfway mark, before surging to the lead in the third quarter and never surrendering it, despite a strong finish by the Russian Olympic Committee pair. It's New Zealand's fourth medal of the Games and second in rowing.
At the Cloud on Auckland's waterfront this afternoon, Grace Prendergast's father Tim was bursting with pride at the duo's win.
Two different personalities that have created such a good combination. Very down-to-earth girls. It's just Grace and Kerry, and great girls.
However, the stiff competition made Kerry Gowler's mother Diane nervous.
I was quite relaxed until I seen the other boats so close. Then I started to stress.
Gowler and Prendergast will chase more gold in the final of the women's 8 tomorrow. The government's confirmed the Trans-Tasman bubble will close as planned tomorrow at midnight. It's also announced an extra 500 places for managed returnees from New South Wales. Acting COVID-19 Response Minister Aisha Verrill says since the government flagged the closing of the bubble, demand from people who would be able to travel to New Zealand under certain conditions has dropped off. Extra flights have been put on, but she says about 3,000 seats are still available. Based on this, the bubble will close tomorrow and any remaining travellers are urged to book a seat immediately. Nearly 106,000 people made an appointment to get a COVID-19 vaccine on the first day of the national booking system. It went live yesterday for people in groups 1, 2 and 3, aged 60 and older. Katie Todd reports.
The Health Ministry says about 950,000 people are now booked to get a shot. Its Director General Ashley Bloomfield describes the system as a resounding success. He says more than 70% of people aged 65 and over have either been vaccinated or have made a booking. Meanwhile, 165,000 eligible people in the 60 to 64 age group have been sent emails, texts or letters asking them to book in.
A UN official with COVID-19 has been evacuated to New Zealand on a mercy flight from Fiji. The person is being taken to Auckland for hospital treatment despite an earlier decision by the Ministry of Health to decline the transfer. Fiji's Health Secretary James Fong says the person is not a Fijian national.
I have to presume so, that he's working within the UN. See, all I know is that it was organized by the UN, by some people within the UN organization. Further than that, I do not know more about the details of that case.
James Fong says the flight was organised without his government's involvement. A 6-month dispute between Wellington bus drivers and the capital's biggest bus operator is finally over. Tramways Union Branch Secretary Kevin O'Sullivan says 60% of the 230 members employed by NZ Bus voted in favour of the company's latest offer today.
I'm just glad that we've got to the point now where we can move on and continue to make these improvements, which everyone, as I said, everyone accepts are long overdue. And having the New Zealand Bus Agreement ratified means that we can start that journey.
Kevin O'Sullivan says drivers will be paid the living wage, partly subsidised by the Regional Council. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 5. Rowers Kerry Gowler and Grace Prendergast were unsure they had even won when they crossed the line to take the women's pair gold medal in Tokyo this afternoon. The two-time world champions and race favourites headed off the Russian Olympic Committee and Canada to secure New Zealand's first gold of the Games. However, Gowler told Sky she was confused as to how they'd performed.
We crossed and I was like, was someone ahead of us? I don't know. I was just so focused on us, and so I was just like, did we do it? But honestly, I can't believe it.
Meanwhile, single sculler Emma Twigg has advanced to tomorrow's final, winning her semi-final comfortably by a boat length, with a time 3 seconds faster than her nearest rival. And swimmer Lewis Clareburt is into tomorrow's final of the 200 metres individual medley, qualifying 7th fastest. The Black Fern Sevens have won their opening pool game 29-7, and shooter and Rio silver medalist Natalie Rooney has finished 10th in the trap, failing to qualify for the medal round. A German cycling boss has apologised for making racist comments during a men's Olympic time trial. Patrick Moster, who's the sports director of Germany's Cycling Federation, was caught making the remarks on German TV as one of his team's riders chased 2 African riders during the event. That's the news.
A proud moment for this Fijian mum.
People are going out, beating drums just to show how happy we are that Fiji has won another gold for our country.
But not for our supermarkets.
It would be amazing not to have so much of pay going on really basic items.
And bees buzzing from caffeine.
Bees are amazing learners, but often they can forget stuff quite quickly if it's not being reinforced. It seems like caffeine helps them hang on to those memories a bit better.
Also powered by caffeine. Morning reports weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waitomo, including Coromandel, Taumaranui and Taupo. Cloudy periods and isolated showers. Areas of fog tonight and tomorrow morning. Bay of Plenty, mainly fine tonight. Cloudy periods and isolated showers tomorrow. For Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, fine weather. Taranaki to Wellington, including Taihape, fine apart from areas of cloud with isolated showers tonight. Marlborough and Nelson, fine until this evening, then patchy rain developing. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, cloud increasing. Isolated showers turning to rain in Fiordland and southern Westland tomorrow, possibly heavy. Canterbury, Otago and Southland mainly fine. However, cloud increasing tomorrow in Otago and Southland with scattered light rain developing. Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy with occasional rain. RNZ National. It's 7.5 minutes past 5.
Kia ora rā e ho, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. How do gold medal winning Olympic rowers celebrate? Well, get back on the water, of course, and that is no joke, as rowing pair Grace Prendergast and Kerry Gowler brought home New Zealand's first gold medal of the Tokyo Olympics today. There was just 2 things on their minds. Had they done New Zealand proud? And how quickly could they get back out on the water ahead of their rowing 8s final tomorrow? Jean Bell and cameraman Nick Monroe were at the Cloud for all the action and reaction.
24 hours ago. Olympic gold medal too. First Olympic gold in the women's pair.
The moment world champion rowing pair Kerry Gowler and Grace Prendergast snatched New Zealand's first Olympic gold.
We now have the Olympic gold medal too. First Olympic gold in the women's pair.
Back home at the Cloud, there was sheer elation and excitement for their friends and family as the rowers crossed the finish line just 1 second ahead of their rivals, the Russian Olympic Committee and Canada. There were high hopes after Kerry and Grace, who have been together for 7 years, smashed a world record in their semi-final.
An emotional father, Tim Prendergast, is bursting with pride.
So just amazing that together two different personalities that have created such a good combination. Very down-to-earth girls. It's just Grace and Kerry, and great girls, yeah.
Mum Sally says the girls kept their focus.
They appear so level-headed and calm, but modest as well. Like, you know, they don't want to talk too much before they actually race. You know, they just keep it very level.
She says the duo faced challenges training during the pandemic.
You know, they've worked so hard. They made the most of COVID lockdown. They trained all the time, and so proud.
Whilst their parents watched on the big screen, back on the Sea Forest waterway in Japan, the reality of their win was still sinking in for New Zealand's newest Golden Girls.
Honestly, I don't really know at the moment. It's such a whirlwind and it's such a dream, but I'm just so stoked. I'm just so happy. Yeah, same. I can't believe it. Like, I feel like we crossed the line and I just started yelling, have we done it? But yeah, it's amazing. I'm so glad.
Kerry's parents, Manawatu farmers Diane and Brent, are thrilled.
Still sinking in.
It's nice that the expectation was realised. I think you sort of sit at a level for so long wondering, and it's now done. So.
Also amongst supporters in the Clouds makeshift grandstand is Rachel McCann, a school friend of Grace's.
I talked, messaged her this morning, and she was just saying she couldn't wait for it. She was nervous, but she couldn't wait for it. And I think when you hear them speak, they're just so confident in their ability, and they're just so deserving. They've put in so much work. None of us will know how much work they've put in, but you could see it. They were just confident in what they needed to do.
Top of the world, top of the Olympic tree as well. That is Prendergast and Gowler.
Strict COVID rules during the Olympics mean athletes must put on their own medals. There was emotion amongst the crowd at the Cloud as Kerry and Grace placed gold medals around each other's necks. Meanwhile, the Gowlers say they'll be spending tonight enjoying a celebratory drink and responding to a flood of congratulatory text messages.
We've got about half an hour of admin on texting.
I haven't even looked at my phone.
And they'll all be back tomorrow. There's no rest for the wicked. This afternoon, Kerry Gowler and Grace Prendergast were already back on the water practising with the women's rowing 8 ahead of their final tomorrow afternoon.
And Grace Prendergast and Kerry Gowler join me now live from Tokyo. Grace, did you even get a minute to stop and celebrate and scoff down a slice of pizza?
Not yet. I think that's tomorrow's job. I had some peanut butter and jam on toast. That's about as good as I got. But yeah, no time to really let it sink in.
And then straight back out on the water.
Yeah, we went for a quick row on the 8, which was actually quite nice to jump back in that boat and sort of flick to what we've got to do tomorrow. But yeah, no rest for the wicked.
Well, let's talk about what you did today. Utterly amazing. Congratulations. What were you saying to each other when you went over the line?
I think as soon as we crossed the line, Kerry just turned to me and was like, have we done it? And I was like, yeah, I think we have. I think we were just so in our own boat and sort of focused on what we were doing. It took a moment to settle in, sink in, and I still don't know if it really has sunk in yet, to be honest.
As we were all glued to our televisions watching you, we kind of saw you give the side eye to the Canadian team as you were coming down the back half, and you were clearly talking to each other. What was going on at that point?
I think just based on the racing earlier in the week, we knew you couldn't count out anybody else. So coming into that last sort of 500, I think I just wanted to have a bit of a double check and sort of take note of where everyone was and what everyone was doing, and just to make sure we weren't going to kind of get caught off guard. And I think we were just trying to stay in our boat and stay calm, but make sure we knew what was happening with the rest of the field.
You would have made a heap of sacrifices to get where you are today. You know, early mornings, hours on the road, working hard out when others, are couch surfing. Has it all been worth it?
Yeah, it's definitely been worth it. And I think, also we enjoy that we get to do this for our job. So you've got it. Yeah, you do have to sacrifice things, but then on the flip side, we're very lucky to be able to do something that we love
as our full-time job and then come and get to have an experience like this. So, yeah, I think it definitely makes all the hard work and the early mornings and the tough days worth it when you can get a result like this.
I know this is going to be like asking you about your favourite child, but how does it compare to win a gold compared to the other records and victories you've had?
I think everything is so special, but I think the Olympics just being normally every 4 years, but this one every 5 years, I think it just makes it that much more special. And, you know, it's sort of what every country prioritises, and everyone's going to turn up at Olympic Games putting their best foot forward. So I think, yeah, this one does top it off, and it is a bit more special than all the other ones, which is exciting.
Can you try for us to sum it up in a few words? What is it like to be an Olympic gold medalist?
I think just surreal is how I would explain it. Like, the support that we've received over this week has been incredible, right from the heat to the semi-finals, and then today, like, I don't quite really know how to even take it all in, and to feel like you've got a whole country that's sort of been on this journey with you is incredible. And it's still surreal, and I don't think it'll sink in for a while.
Hey Grace, just before you go, a bit of a public service message from your dad. He's a bit worried that you might be getting sunburnt.
Oh, no, never. I'm very diligent with that. I know better than that.
Oh, fantastic. Hey, is Kerry standing there next to you? Can we have a chat?
Yes, I've got her here. I'll pass you over.
Are you there, Kerry?
Hello. Yeah.
Hey, congratulations. Absolutely fantastic effort.
Thank you very much.
So how do you look in gold, Kerry?
I mean, I think pretty good.
Fantastic. Hey, tell us about when you went over the line, because you were slightly confused, not so sure that you had it in the bag, weren't you?
Yeah, I think as Grace said, we were just so in our boat in our race, and I sort of didn't want to start celebrating before I knew. I just turned to Grace and asked if we'd done it, but I think, like, I obviously did know where everyone else was in the race, but couldn't be so sure. I think it was just like one of those moments where you just can't believe it.
Because you're like a missile, right? Your eyes are locked on straight ahead and you're just going for it. So what are you thinking when you're in that headspace?
Well, I guess I feel as though I don't need to sort of look anywhere. I feel like I trust that Grace knows what's going on and is going to call what we need to do. And I think at the end of the day, we just have to race from A to B as fast as we can. So there's no point in me looking around at what's going on. But yeah, no, it is unusual how I just don't really look anywhere.
What was it like when they bring the medals over to you, right, on the tray? And it was just fantastic to see you picking up the medal and putting it around your buddy and your fellow champion's neck. What was that like?
Yeah, I think that's pretty special. That's something we've never actually got to do, as sort of give each other the medals. So that was actually really cool, because it was a really special moment to be able to present them to each other for all the hard work that we've put in.
Had you had a chat about it, or did you just decide on the hoof that's the way you were going to do it?
No, we just decided that's how we were going to do it.
Wonderful, wonderful effort today, and best of luck tomorrow. We'll all be cheering you on.
Thank you very much. Love the support.
Fantastic to talk to you. All the best. And that was Olympic gold medalist Kerry Gowler, and before that we were talking to her rowing partner Grace Prendergast. Amazing effort today. It is 18 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai. Thanks for listening. E haere aki nei. Oranga Tamariki apologises for putting a perfectly healthy child in hospital for weeks because it couldn't find anywhere better to place them. A UN official with COVID has been evacuated from Fiji on a Mercy flight. after a U-turn from our health authorities. RNZ understands the woman who's seriously ill will be treated at Auckland's Middlemore Hospital, despite New Zealand initially refusing to let her in because of capacity issues. The hospital system in Fiji is overrun with 1,000 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours and 12 deaths this week. The UN's senior official in Fiji, Sanaka Samarasinga, explains the decision to evacuate her. So this is pretty critical?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, we have a threshold, Lisa, just to say, in the UN system, and it doesn't matter which country it is. We do consider, a certain threshold at which point we kickstart the Medevac process. But then, we apply against that threshold the ability of a patient to receive care in country. Obviously, that would be the first choice. And now it's possible, whilst you can still receive some care here in Fiji, it was determined by the doctors that it was necessary to get her care that is not available at this point in Fiji. And so, as we do normally, we start looking for places where the patient can be Medevac too, and obviously we would look to the countries that are the closest that have the ability to do so. And as I said, New Zealand has excellent facilities and is able to provide this care, and we're very grateful.
Is it an issue of access to a respirator?
I can't give you the details, Lisa, to be honest, and in part I don't actually know because I'm not a doctor. But I can assure you that a lot of factors were considered, and a lot of doctors were involved on both sides and on the UN side as well before this decision was made. It wasn't taken lightly because, as you can imagine, with any kind of medical evacuation, especially when it's a serious case, it's also very risky to fly people and move people. So, all those things have been considered by the doctors, and it was determined that this is the best course of action.
Health authorities here put out a statement saying that they'd taken medical advice and also had capacity issues. So in the first instance, they were not accepting this person. I'm just wondering what changed. Did you have some help putting your case to the government and to medical authorities here? And if so, where did that come from?
I have continued to engage with the High Commissioner here. The UN in New York has engaged continuously with the mission there. And again, the doctors have been talking to each other. So, what I can tell you, Lisa, is that this decision was made purely on medical grounds, and I believe from New Zealand's perspective on the basis that New Zealand is able to provide that service. So can't tell you really anything more than that.
People have obviously been watching the situation in Fiji, and there are many, many people who are seriously ill, and the hospital is obviously over capacity. I mean, this week already more than 10 people dead and hundreds of cases every day. So I suppose potentially the argument is that there is a number of people like your colleague who would benefit from medical treatment in New Zealand. So why her and not them?
I can fully appreciate that. And look, I can tell you this is what we do every day for a living, right? That's why the United Nations is here. That's why the World Health Organization is here. That's why UNICEF is working here. We're doing the best we can, as is New Zealand and Australia and everybody else, to help the people of Fiji. But as you well know, Lisa, we, as the UN, we're made up of member states. Member states include all the countries that are there, including New Zealand, Australia, and everybody else, Fiji as well. And our ability to be able to provide that kind of support and service, especially at a time of crisis, is dependent very much on our ability to deploy staff to these crisis environments, whether it's a conflict or some other type of disaster. And our ability to be able to deploy staff to those environments is also based on our ability to give a degree of assurance that if it is a life-threatening situation, we would do our very best to provide the duty of care that we can to our staff members. If that doesn't happen, we're not able to provide support that we can as the UN.
Are you able to tell us whether this woman is vaccinated and fully vaccinated?
I can't tell you for sure, I'm afraid, Lisa.
How is she doing?
We don't know. Obviously, she's not doing very well. We're all very concerned. Of course, we're all rooting for her, and I know her personally. She's a fighter, and so we just have to keep our fingers crossed. And we do know that when she's in New Zealand, and she's, like I said, she's got excellent care. The doctors have done all they could here in Fiji, and I'm certain that the doctors in the ICU in Auckland will be doing the same. So, I'm really looking forward to a very positive outcome.
It is obviously a dangerous situation in Fiji, so I'm wondering how many UN staffers are still there and whether you are planning to get out.
No, not me. The captain's the last person to leave the ship, right? So I don't intend to leave.
And that is Sanaka Samarasinghe, and there are 700 UN workers in Suva. In a statement, the Ministry of Health says Auckland's Medical Officer of Health has approved a transfer plan for the patient, taking into account the safety of the UN worker and the crew transporting her, with strong protocols in place for the transfer. To some breaking news now. Australian media are reporting that the whole Aussie track and field team has been put into isolation in Tokyo because an athlete has been potentially exposed to COVID-19. The entire 63-person squad has now been placed into isolation as a precaution. A US pole vaulter has tested positive. An Australian pole vaulter, Curtis Marshall, has been deemed a close contact. It is 25 minutes past 5. Kia amo tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Oranga Tamariki has apologised for keeping a child in hospital care for 9 weeks because it couldn't find a suitable placement. In documents posted online by cyber attackers who targeted the DHB, staff said the youngster did not require admission to hospital for any medical reason and was not unwell. The Minister for Children is calling for an investigation into the case, and advocates say it is disturbing and outrageous. Mani Donop reports.
Since RNZ broke the story, Oranga Tamariki, who initially would not provide comment on the case, sent a statement this afternoon apologising, admitting it did not do the best for the child. The ministry confirmed it did receive a complaint from the Waikato DHB and has apologised to the staff that were impacted by the lack of quality service provided. It won't provide an interview and says it's limited in what it can say due to privacy concerns. In the documents, it was revealed the child was confined to a hospital paediatric ward for 67 days. The DHB reluctantly accepted admission for 1 week after the child's initial placement had broken down. Despite the lengthy stay, staff said the child didn't require admission to hospital for any medical reason and was not unwell. As a result, the young child, who had a lovely manner and nature, became institutionalised, effectively living in a hospital. Something that advocate Julia Whaiporti says is distressing, and the harm this caused the child could be irreparable.
The impact on this young person's life will be profound, and that lies squarely at the feet of Oranga Tamariki, which does not live up to its name, and really highlights the mamae that children who are meant to be our taonga experience, the families, the harm that this causes, not just today but ongoing. Of course, we're not going to trust systems that are in place that are meant to care for us, and they hurt us.
There have been 5 reviews since 2019 into Oranga Tamariki that have all called for transformational change at the ministry. Julia Whaiporti says the more time the government wait to act on the recommendations, more harm will be caused to whānau.
You have a system that has comprehensively, by design, failed this young person and their family and many young people and their families. We know this is not an isolated case, and this is the thing that concerns me right now. Transformational change has been called for, and while we have an advisory group of a Crown-led process, waiting the results of another report that's about to come out, we have children that are being hurt and families that are being hurt daily.
The Minister, Calvin Davis, is asking Oranga Tamariki for assurances that all appropriate support is being provided to the child and their family. Social worker and state care survivor Paula Crawford-Moyle cried as she read the story and triggered her own trauma. She says, unfortunately, it was unsurprising and it was clear the child was calling out for what they needed and the state failed them.
What we had was pure incompetence all the way through. Where's the accountability? Who knew about this? And what justifies keeping a child in that kind of environment for 9 weeks because you can't find a placement? I believe that we need a higher calibre of training, compassion and care and understanding for these children. And this is just another example of somebody who just doesn't get the needs of children. I really think that heads need to roll with this one.
The Minister for Children was not available for an interview today, but said in a statement he was concerned about the claims regarding the care of a young person. He has asked for a briefing and expects all issues raised to be investigated thoroughly. OT say it has offered to explore how it can work to provide better support for children in Oranga Tamariki care who are in hospital. All documents have been securely handled and no confidential patient information has been retained by RNZ.
E te iwi e haere ake nei I a checkpoint. The businesses trialling the jab on the job option will be live in Tokyo for the rest of the day's action and the medals in sight. And the dogs are back in town in Blenheim. T's and C's apply. Homai o whakaaro, we'd love your feedback on anything you've heard in the programme this evening. Do get in touch. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Really interested in your thoughts on the supermarket review. Are you getting ripped off at the checkout? Do send us your feedback. It is time now for the headlines with Susanna.
Kia ora, Lisa. The Trans-Tasman bubble will close as planned tomorrow at midnight. Acting COVID-19 Response Minister Aisha Verrill says since the government flagged the closing of the bubble, demand to travel to New Zealand has dropped off. Extra flights have been put on, but she says around 3,000 seats are still available. Any remaining travellers are urged to book a seat immediately. A UN official seriously ill with COVID-19 was evacuated from Fiji on a Mercy flight to New Zealand because she was in critical condition. The woman was initially refused entry to New Zealand by the Health Ministry. The UN's most senior official in Fiji, Sanaka Saramasinga, told Checkpoint the decision had not been taken lightly to seek the evacuation and her prognosis was causing concern. Nearly 106,000 people made a COVID-19 vaccination appointment on the first day of a national booking system. The Health Ministry says about 950,000 people are now booked to get a shot. Oranga Tamariki has apologised for leaving a child in a hospital for 9 weeks because it couldn't find a place for them. In documents posted online by the cyber attackers who targeted the Waikato DHB, staff say the child had no medical reason for being in hospital. The Minister for Children, Calvin Davis, says he has asked the Ministry for a briefing. Rowers Kerry Gowler and Grace Prendergast were unsure they had even won when they crossed the line to take the women's pair gold medal in Tokyo this afternoon. Grace Prendergast has told the programme it took a long time to sink in as they were so focused on racing. She says she celebrated with peanut butter and jam on toast and they had to return to the water to train for the eights final tomorrow. Police explosives disposal experts and other people are continuing to search Te Papa in Wellington after a suspicious item was found there this afternoon. The museum was evacuated shortly after 2 o'clock as a precaution. Those are the latest news headlines on RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. No mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku hoa in INA. Ko Nona Peltier. Hey Nona, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Does that seem like a good celebration for a gold medal?
I'm sure it's delicious. But not my taste.
Okay, let's move on to business. Business confidence, it seems to have taken, well, a bit of a hit with the midwinter blues. What's going on?
Yes, well, it looks like it's a bit of a dilemma here for the Reserve Bank. So pessimism is coming back into the business confidence survey. And at the same time, inflation expectations are also increasing. Those two things don't go well together, let's just say. So the Reserve Bank is going to have to try and balance that off. On one hand, the net 4% of businesses saying that they expect the economy will get worse. And on their outlook, it fell net 6 percentage points to 26%. Are expecting their own positions to get worse. That's a quarter. That's quite a large number. So that means that the Reserve Bank is going to be reviewing the official cash rate next month. The market had been expecting the Reserve Bank to raise that, but with a pessimistic outlook, it could be quite difficult. On the other hand, the latest part of this survey that took place late in the month showed the expectations for inflation was 3.3%, and that prices were going up because of all sorts of other costs, and it was more than just shipping costs, which are sort of one time could pass. Yeah, so we'll watch this space, I guess.
Let's talk about New Zealand's largest life insurance company. This is AIA, and it is admitted making false or misleading statements to customers. I mean, what were they telling people?
Well, you might recall there was a review taking place of the insurance industry by the Reserve Bank Financial Markets Authority, and this has sort of thrown up quite a lot of these types of issues. So I guess during the process, this particular insurance company noted that they had made some mistakes in the way they were communicating with their customers. So some of the things that they were doing was charging premiums on cancelled policies, and at the same time treating some policies as if they were terminated when they should have remained in force. That was amongst some of the things that the insurance company admitted to. Now, this is the largest life insurance company. So the Financial Markets Authority took them to the High Court anyway, where they've admitted this, and they're saying, okay, look, here's the deal. We want them. They've saved us the cost of a trial. We think that the fine should be about $700,000. And this isn't going to be the end of it. There are a lot more types of admissions to come from other insurance companies.
Let's take a spin around the markets, Nona.
Yeah, interesting. We were a bit sluggish through some of the morning, and then we picked up a bit with Asia feeling a little bit more positive following the U.S. Federal Reserve statement, which was going to hold monetary policy where it was staying. But then something remarkable happened. Mainfreight came up with a trading update, super strong one. Their share price rose 5% at the end of the day, and we ended up rising. That's the NZX Top 50 index. It rose 1%, or 134 points to 12,729. So that was a very strong finish. And the dollar steady, 69.7 US cents, 94.5 Australian, and 50 pence.
Kia ora, Nona. That's Nona Peltier with Business News. Do you shop with Team Foodstuffs or Team Woolworths? A draft report released this morning by the Commerce Commission says those two companies have an effective duopoly over the grocery sector in New Zealand. That means groceries are costing people more and food producers are earning less than they should. It's also preventing other big players from entering the market. Anei te kaiwi poata a Ben Strang.
Which supermarket you shop at likely makes little difference to your wallet. The Commerce Commission were tasked with finding out whether there's enough competition in the grocery sector late last year. Today, Chair Anna Rawlings had the answer.
So in competition terms, what we have found is that the retail grocery sector can best be described as a duopoly with a fringe of other competitors.
In fact, 90% of the market sits with one of two main supermarket chains, Foodstuffs, which runs Pack and Save and New World, or Woolworths, owner of Countdown. The smaller players barely get a look in. Anna Rawlings says this doesn't work for consumers.
If competition was more effective, retailers would face stronger pressure to compete with one another and to deliver to consumers the right prices, the right quality, the right range of goods to satisfy their diverse range of preferences.
And that could mean more bang for our buck. Consumers Head of Research, Jessica Wilson, says it confirms her concerns about pricing in the grocery sector and intervention is needed.
Requiring the major chains to operate with fair terms and conditions, essentially letting other retailers get access to the wholesale prices. A mandatory code of conduct, we think, could also have a lot of traction if that code of conduct also set fair conduct obligations on the major chains.
Wholesale supply and a lack of land for new sites were cited as a barrier to increasing competition. It suggests intervention is needed, such as increasing wholesale supply or making more land available through zoning changes. If that can't or doesn't work, another option is to create a new major grocery retailer. In Johnsonville, just north of Wellington, there are 2 Countdown supermarkets within 300 metres of one another. So what do shoppers think of a government-run Ministry of Supermarkets or a foreign company moving in?
I think competition would be great. The price of food's ridiculous and it just keeps going up and up.
Yeah, if they're going to do it, yes, definitely, most definitely, but they've got to make sure that they stick to their word.
I think they could be part of the problem, but potentially I think government intervention would definitely help.
Well, they didn't do anything about our petrol prices, so quite frankly I don't think they're going to do anything about the supermarkets.
If a new player were to come into the market, the Commerce Commission believes prices would come down. Here's Anna Rawlings again.
The major grocery retailers really only consider one another when they're making decisions about pricing and about their retail offerings and about the establishment of new stores.
And as the 2 major players are accused of price matching, they're also matching each other's words. Neither would be interviewed by RNZ, instead sending through remarkably similar written statements. Countdown's Managing Director Spencer Sun said it was a draft report, but on face value some of the recommendations would have significant implications and will need time to work this through and understand the impact. While Antoinette Laird, the head of corporate affairs for Foodstuffs, said it was a draft report, but we note some of the options outlined would have wide-reaching implications and we need some time to work through what this impact might look like. The Commerce Commission's report is now open for public submissions and a final report is due by the end of November.
Homai o whakaaro, send me your feedback. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mo te hōtaka nei. Love to hear from you on the issue of paying too much at grocery stores. The official verdict is in from this Commerce Commission report. How do you feel about the lack of competition? How do we get around it? How do we encourage more players into the market? Pātui mai, text me 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. More than 200 businesses have put their hands up to offer COVID shots at the office. As the rollout ramps up, the Ministry of Health asked workplaces to apply to join in, but set strict criteria. Trial runs are already underway, but as Lydia Batham reports, workforce hesitancy might be the biggest issue.
Rolling up your sleeve, a short stroll from your desk. For those working at New Zealand's largest companies, that could be where they build up COVID immunity. Trial runs are taking place at 4 big businesses: F&P Healthcare, Fonterra, The Warehouse and Main Freights.
Frankly, our people got their A's into G and have made it happen.
That's Main Freight's Group Managing Director Don Braid. Its pilot began on Tuesday, with 48 people getting their first shot. Tomorrow, about 100 more will line up before they operate a full clinic next week. With many clamouring to get their first shot, you'd think it would be easy to fill up slots. Not so.
We were a little disappointed earlier in the piece with the bookings for next week, but it's quite interesting after the numbers we've done, the amount of new bookings we've got. So it looks like a pretty full week next week.
Don Braid says getting it up and running's taken a bit of work too, including redeploying staff.
A number of our training team have done that, and a few of our administration people have got involved, and together they've worked really well to get this stood up and underway.
He says it works just like any other vaccination clinic, with team members either bused or driving to the site. It's early stages for other businesses who've had to team up with vaccination providers to submit expressions of interest to the Ministry of Health. One of those providers is Habit Health. Its Occupational Health Operations Manager, Lauren Kilcully, explains who can sign up.
Those clients who would be eligible are either considered the largest workplaces in New Zealand, so we're talking employing 1,000 plus people, or They may be a smaller workplace with a hard-to-reach population, or maybe have a high proportion of Māori, Pacific or ethnic populations.
Businesses also need to make sure at least 70 people work at each site and that 30 shots can be given each day. Lauren admits that's put some businesses they usually provide flu jabs for off. They'll be paid per dose given and provide nurses and an administrator to help with logistics.
So we would work with the employer from everything from sorting out the bookings, where we need to use the Ministry of Health booking system, booking in the day, arranging appointments, going on site. We bring the vaccine.
That's all paid for by the Ministry of Health. Companies taking part will have to provide certain staff too, including traffic and site management and admin. But Business NZ CEO Kirk Hope says it makes financial sense.
The only kind of cost burden in it, and it's pretty counterbalanced by being able to ensure that you've vaccinated your staff, or that your staff are vaccinated, I should say, is the time taken for people to get the vaccination.
And whilst lots of businesses are keen,
it's not going to work for every company. What the officials have been looking for is organisations that can do it at scale. And so there will be some companies who weren't able to do that, despite the fact that they would be interested in doing so. I think for a couple of reasons. A, wanted to participate to ensure that their staff could get access to the vaccine, to provide safe facilities. It's another way to support their employees and their families.
More than 200 expressions of interest have been sent to the Ministry of Health from a range of industries, including retail, banking, telcos and central and local governments. There's currently no time frame on when workplace vaccinations will become the norm, with the Ministry just saying they look forward to working with some of the applicants as the rollout ramps up. Back to the pilot scheme, Mainframe's Don Braid is hoping they'll iron out any kinks in the system. But just one main issue remains.
I think we've still got some work to do to convince, as many as we can to be vaccinated. So, that's still a challenge for us.
So while business wants the vax, getting their people on board could be the biggest hurdle.
It's 5:45. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He muriaki ina pita pita kōrero. After the news at 6, we'll look ahead to New Zealand's medal prospects in Tokyo. Ports of Auckland appears to be welcoming a new era in their relationship with the council and unions after years of tension. A damning safety report earlier this year revealed major concerns, laying the blame squarely with management. Today, Ports representatives fronted to an Auckland Council meeting to give an update on their safety improvements, and the reviews were glowing. Nita Blake-Person reports.
The last time Ports of Auckland management fronted to an Auckland Council meeting back in May, Tony Gibson was the chief executive. But just days after that hui, and after months of tension following major safety concerns, he resigned. Today it was interim CEO Wayne Thompson who appeared alongside Safety and Wellbeing Manager Vanessa Matakatia. He said they had a detailed plan in place for improving the business.
We can't go back and fix the past, but what we can do is sort of work on and deal with the future, and that's what we're committed to do as a team.
And already that team appears to be boosting the port's relationship with its only shareholder, Auckland Council. Mayor Phil Goff, who ordered the independent safety review into the ports after it was linked to 3 deaths and multiple injuries, said the feedback so far was positive.
We sometimes throw brickbats. This time it's a bouquet to ports and to MUNs that are working closely together on this. And Russell said he didn't mind me saying that he thought that the relationship between the union and the ports at the current time was the best that it's ever been, and how pleased they are, Vanessa, with the job that you're doing.
The ports management gave an update on how they were dealing with the 45 recommendations that came from the safety review carried out by Construction Health and Safety New Zealand, or CHASNZ. Vanessa Matakatia described working constructively with staff involving union officials and delegates and focusing on a culture change.
When I came in, there was certainly a level of fear there that they couldn't talk, or they couldn't raise those risks in relation to what they were. We're certainly breaking that barrier. So for me, the voice coming from our people, that if they're not comfortable with something, they will say so.
She says they hope to have fully implemented all of the report's recommendations by next June, with plenty of monitoring being done around that. The ports today also gave a revised plan around its automation project, which has been marred by delays and was recently paused after a crash. It's now expected to go live in March 2022. While port staff were today speaking to councillors about safety and not automation, CEO Wayne Thompson acknowledged they were linked.
Safety trumps everything. in regard to everything we're doing at the moment. And it's fair to say, and I don't want to get into automation and timeframes, etc., it's not really the environment, but safety will trump speed and safety will trump timing of that rollout as well.
Councillor Richard Hill's among those who were pleased about the change in relations between the organisations.
Just the conversation here is probably the best conversation I've had with the Ports of Auckland in the last couple of years as a group, and I feel hopefully this means a relationship change. I have not felt comfortable in the last few meetings over the last couple of months or year, so thank you for that.
And for Phil Goff, who had been unable to express confidence in former CEO Tony Gibson, today was pleasing with the progress being made.
Everything I've heard today and the feedback I got earlier from the union was that things are heading in the right direction. Having said that, you are operating essentially in a high-risk environment on the port, and none of us can say with total assurance that there will be no more accidents. What I need to be able to know is that everything is being done and everybody is working in the same direction to prevent further accidents. And I'm increasing in my confidence that that is happening for the first time in 4 years.
The Ports of Auckland will give another update on their safety performance to the Council in October.
It should have been the Kiwi dream. Instead, a high-achieving Indian immigrant says he'll leave the country because his wife and daughter aren't allowed in. Chandra Raju last saw his wife and little girl 2 years ago and had plans to reunite in regional New Zealand. Now, an immigration lawyer says New Zealand's reputation will suffer major damage. Nick Trubridge has the story.
Chandra Raju is a University of Waikato success story. His background and achievements splashed on the institution's website as a way of attracting prospective students. He's got 16 years' experience in capital markets and banking, is the recipient of Education NZ scholarships, gained a master's in accounting at Waikato University, and has stayed in the regions to work as a finance manager for an animal genetics company. He also volunteers for community patrols in his community.
Wherever possible, I get an opportunity. I'm trying to contribute to connect with the community, in terms of knowing the culture, building that relationship.
Chandra hasn't seen his wife and 10-year-old daughter since mid-2019. They're back in India and he misses them.
It is, emotionally draining. It's tough because, India also has COVID challenges and, this feeling of guilt, like, something happens back home. What am I really trying to achieve? Came here for settlement and to have some good work-life balance, plus having, decent living for children in terms of their studies and things like that.
He came here pre-COVID with the plan his family would follow. But Chandra's Kiwi dream is over before it really started. The former University of Waikato scholar has told his boss he'll likely pack his bags and go home before the year's out.
It has been a rewarding experience in terms of work ex, but personally, it is very mentally straining, with family not being around.
Chandra and his family's path to reunification and residency faces 2 roadblocks. Checkpoint asked Immigration New Zealand about his case, despite the government earlier this year creating border exemptions for partners and dependent children of temporary visa holders. Immigration New Zealand says Chandra's wife and daughter don't qualify. As for Chandra's own residency bid, that's been scuppered because expressions of interest for the skilled migrant category remain suspended. Immigration says it empathises with the difficult position separated migrant families find themselves in, but that's no consolation to Chandra.
There are certain goals in life, right? And when you put it in a checklist environment, I'm not able to tick any of the boxes. Sorry to say that, but neither family is here, nor residency is moving. When family will come, I don't want to live with so many question marks in life.
Immigration lawyer Alistair McClymont believes New Zealand's reputation as a destination for highly skilled migrants is going to suffer generational damage.
The reputation that this country now has about the way that we treat our migrants is so poor.
in comparison to the almost open invitation that countries like Canada are offering skilled migrants around the world, that I think it really is going to take a generation for New Zealand to recover its reputation as being a destination for the highly skilled migrants around the world to come.
He says exemptions for relatives like Chandra's to enter the country should be widened.
When they see a whole lot of other people getting exemptions from the government to come in, it really, it speaks volumes about the prioritisation that this government has over skilled migrants, the graduates here, the people applying for residency, compared to, say, for example, America's Cup, Wiggles, Lion King, rich investors.
Mr McClymont says he's had no news on the resumption of expressions of interest for the skilled migrant category, adding the constant message from Minister Chris Farfoy's office is that the government's looking at options. And it appears nothing's changed. Immigration NZ told Checkpoint the Minister is working through advice on reopening expressions of interest for skilled migrants. Any decision will be communicated publicly, but there's no indication of when that'll be.
And in breaking news, the New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller has requested the help of Australian Defence Force to enforce COVID measures and compliance during the lockdown there in New South Wales. He's requested 300 ADF personnel. New South Wales reported 239 new cases today. Every dog has its day, and it's August the 1st in Blenheim when canines are being allowed back into the CBD thanks to new bylaws. So what's the doggy deal? Ko taku manuhiri I Naianei ko Jamie Arbuckle. Jamie is a Marlborough District Councillor and joins me now. Kia ora, Jamie.
G'day, good to be on.
So what's the deal? Why are canines being welcomed back?
We received a lot of submissions in supporting the council's bylaw to allow dogs into the Blenheim CBD, and the committee and the full council has agreed to that wish.
So what were people's submissions? Tell me what their case was to get their dogs back into town.
Yeah, well, probably firstly, the Blenheim Business Association has, for a number of years now, advocated for dogs to come into the CBD. They can see it as a good opportunity to liven up the CBD, like have alfresco dining and stuff like that. People come in, grab a coffee, sit outside with their dogs. But I guess the general public see it as the Taylor River is close to Blenheim. It's a way of linking the Taylor River, the Blenheim CBD, so you can walk into town, walk back onto the river and walk back home.
So dogs are good for business?
Well, that's what we've been told, and the Blenheim Business Association has advocated that point, and we have listened, and we will see, yes.
So what problems had they been causing? I mean, why weren't they allowed in before?
Yeah, well, it's historical, I guess, local democracy around New Zealand all has different bylaws for different reasons, and the council of the day 10 years ago decided not to have dogs in the CBD. I think times are changing. Definitely there's the thing of having people living in the CBD these days, apartments happening, so it's being more seen as a positive thing. And it's about responsible dog ownership, looking after your dog, having it on a lead, cleaning up after it, and we foresee no problems.
Well, Jamie, seeing as you mentioned that, we've done a number of stories on this program about dog do and people just leaving it all over the shop. Are you convinced that people are going to, well, pick up the poo in town?
Well, that's what we believe will happen, being a responsible dog owner. We have animal control just at our fingertips to ring them up if in case someone's not doing the right thing. And we also have the CBD that regularly gets cleaned morning and night, so hopefully we don't go down to too bad of problems.
So do you get fined if you don't pick up after your dog there?
Yes, you do, yes.
How much?
Anywhere, I think it's around the $200 mark. If you get caught in that, maybe a little bit more.
Whoa, that's an expensive poop. Can you tell me, are the dogs welcome inside shops?
That is generally the shop owners call on that, and I'd say in the majority of cases you would not be allowed to do that, and there's good reasons around health and safety and like food hygiene and stuff. So you'll probably find it's more of a going to A to B kind of situation, or as I say, sitting outside enjoying a hot coffee.
So what's the response been to the decision?
Positive. Like there is a contentious issue, but I'd say that the submissions were definitely in favour of having dogs in the CBD. So I think the response generally from the public is that it's been a good decision.
Jamie, in the interests of full disclosure, because that's what we're into on this program, do you have a dog?
I have two, and I know exactly what you're going to ask me. Will I take them to the CBD? And the answer is no. It's not my cup of tea. I've never really seen my dogs going to the CBD. It's really
They're not
townies.
They're not townies, Jamie.
Well, I have been on the outskirts of town, and I live a little bit more in the rural scene these days, but yeah, just not for me.
So what are their names and what kind of dogs before you head off?
So we've got Blue, who is a Swedish Spellhound, and we've just got another Swedish Spellhound recently who's named Scrappy, and he's about 5 months old.
Great to talk to you, Jamie. Thanks for joining us. That is Jamie Arbuckle, Marlborough District Councillor there, talking about how Blenheim is welcoming dogs back into the CBD. Terms and conditions do apply. So if you're thinking about taking a dog, check it out. August 1 is when the new rules come into force. A bunch of you have been getting in touch on the supermarkets. Julian says it's outrageous how much profiteering is being made by our supermarket duopolies. Kiwis are being ripped off by the likes of Countdown and New World, which helps make the supermarket shareholders and franchise owners ridiculous profits. Enough is enough. Food prices should be more affordable and not a licence to print money. Peter says the New Zealand grocery duopoly has gotten away with outrageous anti-competitive trading practices since their inception in the 60s. Screwing suppliers and consumers whilst running a low wages policy is exploitative. Greed at its absolute worst. That is what Peter reckons. Another person says it's time the government acted on the duopoly and says more competition and Aldi in the food area an obvious player to attract in.
RNZ News at 6, ngā mihi nui, ko Susana Leata with DNA. The government's confirmed the Trans-Tasman bubble will close as planned tomorrow at midnight. It's also announced an extra 500 places for managed returnees from New South Wales. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
When the government announced the suspension of the bubble, there was the possibility of an extension depending on demand. However, acting COVID-19 response minister Aisha Verrill says that demand's dropped off in the last few days, with about 3,000 seats still available. So, as planned, the bubble will close at midnight tomorrow, and any remaining travellers are urged to book a seat immediately. Between the 9th and 22nd of August, 500 more MIQ rooms will be made available. People can register their interest through the COVID-19 travel website.
Australia's Olympic athletics team at the Tokyo Olympics are having to isolate in their rooms and undergo testing after a US pole vaulter has tested positive for COVID-19. The Australian Olympic Committee says the track and field team are isolating as a precautionary measure. The team are undergoing testing procedures in line with the Australian Olympic team protocols. The American pole vaulter Sam Kendricks has dropped out of the Games and transferred to a hotel and put in isolation. The UN says a decision to Medevac a staff member from Fiji who is seriously ill with COVID-19 was not taken lightly. Fiji is grappling with a massive outbreak of the virus, which has killed more than 200 people since April. New Zealand initially refused to let her in because of capacity issues, but has since done a U-turn. UN senior official in Fiji, Sanaka Saramasinga, told Checkpoint she could not get the care she needed in Fiji.
We start looking for places where the patient can be Medevac to, and obviously we would look to the countries that are the closest that have the ability to do so. And as I said, New Zealand has excellent facilities and is able to provide this care, and we're very grateful.
Fiji's health secretary says the person is not a Fijian national. Meanwhile, 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine will be sent to Fiji after approval from New Zealand's medical authority. The Medicines and Medical Devices Safety Authority today granted provisional approval of the COVID-19 vaccine for people aged 18 and older. While Cabinet is yet to consider whether to use the AstraZeneca vaccine in New Zealand, it will allow donations to Pacific countries and has pledged 500,000 doses to Fiji. COVID-19 continues to run rampant in Fiji with over 19,000 positive cases in isolation. The death toll passed 200 and the health system struggling. New South Wales Police has requested the support of 300 members of the Australian Defence Force to enforce COVID measures and help with compliance in the state. It comes as the state recorded 239 new locally acquired cases, the highest number since the start of the outbreak. Adhering to the rules remains the biggest challenge for the state. Authorities have again tightened restrictions, enforcing a 5-kilometre radius around people's homes for those in lockdown in Greater Sydney. The 8 government areas will remain in lockdown until at least August the 28th. A justice advocate says the children and care system must change. RNZ revealed this morning that a child spent more than 9 weeks in a Waikato hospital because Oranga Tamariki failed to find them a suitable placement. Julia Whaiporti says it's distressing. She's angry and believes it's probably not an isolated case.
This is a by design system that has occurred. How many people would have had to be required to sign off that child being institutionalised and essentially imprisoned in the hospital because of the failure of OT to act?
The Minister for Children, Calvin Davis, has called for an investigation. The Commerce and Consumer Affairs Minister says New Zealanders aren't getting a fair deal at the supermarket till, but the government still has to consider a possible response. A report from the Commerce Commission released today says there isn't enough competition in New Zealand's supermarket sector and consumers and suppliers are missing out. David Clark says it's good to have clear, hard data about what's going on through the market analysis, which points to a problem with the current duopoly.
We have one of the most concentrated grocery retail sectors in the Western world. There's some OECD research which is pointed to in the report, which suggests that we have the 6th most expensive grocery sector in the OECD.
David Clark says there won't be one silver bullet and the government will now consider the range of options presented. Te Papa in Wellington is now open again after a suspicious item was found there this afternoon. The museum was evacuated shortly after 2 o'clock as a precaution, and explosives disposal experts and other police staff conducted a search. The police say people can now return to the building. It's 5 minutes past 6. There is no rest for New Zealand's first gold medalists of the Tokyo Olympics. Rowers Grace Prendergast and Kerry Gowler won the women's pair final, finishing ahead of the Russian Olympic Committee and Canada. The New Zealand duo will be chasing another medal in the final of the 8 tomorrow, and Prendergast says they'll be back out on the water today in Tokyo.
We'll go for a quick row on the 8 just to kind of start flipping our minds to tomorrow, but I think the other girls are so excited for us. We just saw them walking in here and they're so excited, so I think it'll be an enjoyable row and another form of celebration for us.
Meanwhile, single sculler Emma Twigg has advanced to tomorrow's final, winning comfortably her semi-final by a boat length with a time 3 seconds faster than her nearest rival. And swimmer Lewis Clareburt is into tomorrow's final of the 200-metre individual medley, qualifying 7th fastest. Tennis players Marcus Daniel and Michael Venus have just begun their men's double semi-final, playing a Croatian combination for a place in the final. Luca Jones has failed to qualify for the canoe slalom final, finishing outside the top 8 in the semis. Golfer Ryan Fox has posted an opening round 1 under par 70 to be 7 shots off the lead held by Austrian Sepp Straka, and BMX rider Rebecca Petch has qualified for tomorrow's semi-finals despite crashing in one of her heats. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Toxic Talk with Leo Shep. This week's poison is ketamine, a useful anaesthetic in the hands of some, a dangerous tool in the hands of others. We've got a new regular guest bringing us up to speed with some of the goings-on at NIWA, the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research. And Andrew Learmont's on the line from Scotland. How are things going there the week after Freedom Day? on Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Meat Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waitomo, including Coromandel, Taumaranui and Taupo. Cloudy periods, isolated showers. Areas of fog tonight and tomorrow morning. Bay of Plenty mainly fine tonight. Cloudy periods and isolated showers tomorrow. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, fine weather. Taranaki through to Wellington, including Taihape, fine apart from areas of cloud and isolated showers tonight. For Marlborough and Nelson, fine until this evening, then patchy rain developing. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, cloud increasing. Isolated showers turning to rain in Fiordland and southern Westland tomorrow, possibly heavy. For Canterbury, Otago and Southland mainly fine, however cloud increasing tomorrow in Otago and Southland with scattered light rain developing. Chatham Islands mostly cloudy with occasional rain. RNZ National. It's 8 minutes past 6.
Ngā mihi Susana, no mai hoki mai. If you're just joining us, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Let's head back to Tokyo now, where several New Zealand athletes are circling the medal podium in contention for some bling to hang around their necks. Our reporter Clay Wilson joins us now from outside the canoe slalom course. Clay, a big day at the rowing for New Zealand, but our Golden Girls, well, they're not done yet at the Olympics, are they?
No, they're absolutely not, Lisa. After winning that gold in the women's double sculls earlier today, Kerry Gowler and Grace Prendergast will go again tomorrow for double gold as part of the women's 8. And this women's 8 are a very good chance to win that gold medal. In their heat, they won that heat to go straight through to this final tomorrow. They were also the defending world champions from 2019, where they won the final, that regatta, in dominant fashion. Also worth noting, the New Zealand women's 8 finished 4th at the 2016 Rio Games, so it would be a sweet victory for that boat if they can take out that, and of course a great moment for Kerry Gowler and Grace Prendergast, 2 gold medals potentially for them at these games. They're not the only New Zealand rowing boat up for a medal tomorrow. The New Zealand men's 8 are also in their final and an outside chance of a medal. And then there's single sculler Emma Twigg. Now she's looked very dominant on her way to that final. She won her heat, her quarterfinal, and earlier today her semi-final, again looking comfortable. So a very good chance of a gold medal for Emma Twigg, who has finished 4th at the last 2 Olympics. Would be a sweet moment for her if she can convert her dominance from leading up to this final into that final tomorrow.
Clay, you're outside the canoe slalom venue, so can you just bring us up to date with Luka Jones's Olympics bid?
Yes, so some unfortunate news for Luka Jones. She's just taken part in the C1 semi-finals. The top 10 out of 18 who competed in those semi-finals would go through. A couple of costly little errors for Luka, and she's finished 13th. I was there as she came across the finish line. You could see the disappointment on her face. She came to pull her boat out of the water, gave her boat to some officials, and then she just took a moment to go and sit down by the water and just contemplate, I guess, her Olympic campaign. You know, you can see the disappointment, and I guess in that moment you can see what it really means to these athletes and all the hard work and sacrifice they put in to have success at these elite events. Now, Luka is, of course, a silver medalist already from the 2016 Rio Games in the K1 class. Earlier in these games, she finished 6th in that, so 6th, and then the semi-finals in this C1 event. But still a very good overall performance and a chance to compete in 2 classes here. The women's C1 class added to the Olympic schedule for the first time here in Tokyo. And I had to say, very lucky for Luka just to be in the water. It's cooled off a little bit here now with a bit of a breeze, but another very hot day. Those of you watching, and you Lisa, will see that I'm being sun smart as possible, and being down there by the water, very, very tempting to jump in and just cool down in this hot Tokyo heat.
Yeah, so those who are listening and not watching, Clay is rocking an absolutely gold medal styles hat with the RNZ logo on it. Good on you there, Clay. Sun smart all the way. Let's talk about our tennis players. So doubles making their bid to get to the gold medal match tonight.
Yeah, that's correct. So Marcus Daniel and Michael Venus have just got underway in their doubles semi-finals. Now, both these players are very well ranked on the international doubles circuit, but they've got a tough test in this semi-final. Croatian pair Marin Cilic and Ivan Dodig. Now, the name Marin Cilic will sound familiar to many sports fans. He is, of course, the 2014 US Open singles champion and a runner-up at both the Australian Open and Wimbledon. Either way, whatever happens for the Kiwis in this game, they will play this match tonight, they will play for a medal tomorrow. Those bronze and gold medal matches in the men's doubles tennis set to go around 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon New Zealand time. And also just worth noting today, young swimmer Lewis Clareburt making it through to the final of the 200-metre individual medley. Of course, he made it through to the final of his specialist event, the 400-metre individual medley, finishing 7th. So a chance here to have another crack at a medal. He's qualified with the 7th fastest time, so an outside chance of a medal, but gets to have a crack at that at just after 11 o'clock tomorrow morning New Zealand time and see if he can finish his games on a high.
Thank you, Clay. It's going to be a cracker of a day tomorrow. That is Clay Wilson joining us from outside the canoe slalom course. I know I'm going to be inundated with feedback about where you can get one of those hats from, so I suppose I better find out in anticipation. Forestry contractors say they're losing money, losing work and losing jobs as a result of fluctuations in the market for timber and delays in the ports. The sector was enjoying some record high prices in the first half of this year, driven by the China market, but those prices have been axed in recent weeks. Contractors are calling for a more sustainable and consistent industry. Harry Locke reports.
2 months ago, the forestry sector was looking pretty rosy.
I've been in the industry for several years and we probably hit a record pricing. So things have been going really well.
Prue Younger is the Chief Executive of the Forestry Industry Contractors Association. She says the unprecedented high pricing led to a flurry of activity as the sector ramped up to export as many logs as possible to international markets. But then it got too much, and the ports, especially in Gisborne, started to get clogged up with all the logs. Robert Stubbs runs the Gisborne-based Stubbs Contractors.
There's no room in the port anymore. We've sort of choked it. All the storage facilities are full, and so now all of that volume is backing up on the jobs out in the forest.
He says he has 3 logging crews, but they've all had to keep a lot of loads on site because there isn't anywhere to transport it off to. As a contractor, delays such as these start to chip away at the finances.
It becomes borderline unmanageable. It makes it hard, overdrafts get stretched, creditors start to get stretched out a little bit, so everybody gets affected down the supply chain. The worst thing is just trying to keep the men employed, machines working, some sort of cash flow coming in that allows you just to sort of ride the storm out until things start to improve.
Delays at the ports are the product of international shipping congestion, largely brought about by COVID-19. But on the East Coast, that has been compounded by bad weather in Gisborne, which has made loading impossible. There was also maintenance work which went on for 20 days, which limited loading to just 50%. Congestion and delays have led to increased shipping costs for exporters, while at the same time the China market is starting to slow down. Vice President of the Forestry Owners Association, Grant Dodson, says prices are down 30%.
There will be a number of jobs in New Zealand that are paused, and that will be because of 2 reasons. Firstly, port congestion. The ports are simply full and there's no room to put the logs in. But also, we're currently in a negotiation phase where many cargoes, the price is yet to be determined. So, people are unwilling to commit to a sale when they don't know what the price is.
Robert Stubbs says this is impacting his work already.
One of my crews at Woodlot job will be finishing its job now and won't have another job to go to, simply because the log prices aren't good enough to continue. I'll have to soak that crew up in amongst my corporate crews that sort of still managing to work.
Prue Younger says there needs to be a change in the way contractors are subjects to the peaks and troughs of the industry.
There just needs to be the realisation that major decisions made at one end of the supply chain affect the other end, and there needs to be greater respect of trying to maintain a workforce.
Grant Dodson says they try as hard as they can to give contractors a solid pipeline of work.
As a forest owner within the business, we go to all the lengths we can possible to support those people, and secondly to give them a continuous flow of work for those contracting businesses. Sometimes the larger forces of the market are just too big to counter, but that's always the objective.
There are hopes that prices will start to rise again around springtime, leading to more harvesting and renewed work for contractors. And in the ports, the literal backlog of timber is starting to move. Eastland Port in Gisborne says they are now shifting the logs much faster. Yesterday they loaded nearly 20,000 tonnes, well over the average of 16,000 tonnes.
It's 17 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. There's political consensus New Zealanders are paying too much for groceries, but little agreement on who's to blame and what should be done. The government isn't ruling anything in or out of its response to the Commerce Commission's draft report that's revealed big retailers are profiting at the expense of consumers and suppliers. Our political editor Jane Patterson has more.
Labor promised to probe the food retail sector during the election campaign, and today's draft report from the Commerce Commission paints an expensive picture. It found the country's two big retailers, Foodstuffs and Countdown, are profiting at the expense of shoppers and suppliers. Commerce and Consumer Affairs Minister David Clark says things must change.
What the report tells us, the draft report, is that things could be more competitive than they are now. I think New Zealanders intuitively feel that grocery prices have been going up. The report highlights that there's international research suggesting New Zealand is the sixth most expensive grocery sector in the OECD. So that suggests we could be doing better here.
So, an improvement needed scorecard. But ask ACT leader David Seymour and he'll tell you this is old news.
We could have told you that last week. I don't see the value that's been added by the Commerce Commission spending millions of dollars pointing out the obvious. These market studies were always a make-work scheme for the Commerce Commission, and so it's come to pass.
Mr Seymour says successive governments, led by both Labor and National, have failed to create an economic environment for any would-be competitors to invest in.
It's very difficult to get foreign competitors who might actually have the skill, the capital and the know-how to compete in this market into New Zealand. It's just too hard. We push people away.
Te Pāti Māori co-leader Debbie Ngāri-Wapaka says the report highlights the struggle many whānau face accessing healthy food. She thinks the solutions could be more grassroots, starting with investing in communities to grow their own kai.
We see some massive food sovereignty going on at Pariaka. There's a lot of fabulous work going on within communities. And if we can give them the investment and the scale to be able to disrupt this food chain, we've then got not only local solutions, but we've then got more competition.
National's Consumer Affairs spokesperson Todd McClay says the Labor government has to take responsibility for its part in driving up food prices through the introduction of fuel taxes. However, he says the Commerce Commission must also be better resourced to enforce the rules it sets.
They already have powers to do something about some of the challenges they've found around the suggestion of anti-competitive practices when it comes to new supermarkets wanting to get land to open up. But I know that they're under-resourced and they don't have the ability to police existing rules as strongly as they would like to.
Mr McClay says the government should work across the aisle to find solutions on common ground, a commitment David Clark will not make.
We'll make the changes we need to make. Obviously, we're in government at the moment. We get the opportunity to take this responsibility forward.
The government will consider the options presented in the Commerce Commission's report when it's finalised in November. In the meantime, New Zealanders will keep paying the price while the big players profit at the supermarket.
Napier City councillors are sticking up for the National Aquarium as it faces possible closure and accusations it's harmful to the animals that live there. The council owns and manages the aquarium and had proposed a $77.5 million upgrade. But its future is under threat after it didn't get the financial help it wanted from the government. Sam Ollie reports.
When the Napier City Council prepared its pitch for an aquarium rebuild in 2019, it found infrastructure problems were much worse than expected. These included severely restricted exhibits, limited quarantine facilities, inadequate water reticulation, filtration tanks in a non-operational state, as well as sharp right angles and unsuitable concrete substrates causing shark injuries. If they're not fixed, the aquarium will likely lose accreditation and the animals will need to be rehomed or euthanised. Napier Mayor Kirsten Wise denies the current infrastructure is failing.
Failing is probably too strong a word to use. So yes, the infrastructure is ageing and parts of it we're having to work really hard with to ensure that it meets the welfare needs of the sea life that's in there. But we have set aside $9 million in our current long-term plan for renewals and maintenance.
This money will go to fix corrosion and leaks in some pumps and tanks, repair and replace heating and chilling coils in exhibits, improve some access, check on the building's electrics and cladding, and do a complete seismic assessment. However, the council hasn't ruled out closing it down. Now it's not getting the central government funding it hoped for.
The reality is that we have to continue to maintain the facility while there's sea life homed there, because we have to ensure that they have a safe environment. So closure is one of the options that we must consider.
Kirsten Wise says there is strong community support to keep the aquarium open, but animal rights lobby group SAFE says sea life shouldn't be in captivity at all. Chief Executive Deborah Ashton wants aquariums phased out.
It's unreasonable, it's unnecessary. There are lots of other ways that people, including children, can learn about fishes without confining them in captivity. And in fact, keeping them in there is teaching them nothing about the needs for those animals to be able to live their real lives out there in the sea.
The National Aquarium is accredited by the Zoo Aquarium Association Australasia, which last completed a report in 2019. Deborah Ashton wants the government to check on animal conditions there and tighten the rules for all facilities keeping fish in New Zealand. The Napier City Council used to also run the Marine Mammal Park Marineland, but that was closed down in 2009. It was still open when Keith Price, who was serving his 5th term on the council, was first voted in. He wants the National Aquarium to be maintained, as long as it's not a major burden on ratepayers.
Our staff would tell us if it shouldn't be open, so we're guided by that, and I'm happy that it's okay for the animals.
Fellow councillor Sally Crown wants to see a world-class but financially prudent upgrade.
It absolutely needs some development. The staff there at the moment are absolutely exceptional and incredible within their industry, really well respected.
Councillor Greg Mawson has spent his life in Napier and is fond of the aquarium, but he says its fate is not up to him.
Well, at the end of the day, it is about the community and what they want, but I do quite like the aquarium.
The community is yet to be fully consulted on the aquarium's future. The council says this will happen next year at the earliest.
The New South Wales Police Commissioner has called in the Australian Defence Force to help deal with the COVID compliance operation in the state. Sydney authorities are tightening COVID restrictions and have promised to crack down on rule breakers as they battle to get the outbreak under control. World Watch's Paulina Lau reports.
The COVID crisis in New South Wales is getting worse. 239 new locally acquired cases today, the highest number since the start of the outbreak. At least 70 were infectious while in the community.
Based on those numbers, we can only assume that things are likely to get worse before they get better, given the quantum of people infectious in the community.
Compliance remains the biggest problem. It's led to tighter restrictions again.
If you live within those 8 local government areas, you need to make sure you wear a mask now at all times. We're receiving and seeing too much evidence of people who aren't wearing masks when they need to.
Those living in the 8 government areas of concern will also be restricted to a 5-kilometre radius around their home, regardless of the reason. Harsher penalties will also be brought in.
Statewide, it's pretty clear when you need to wear a mask, and if you don't, you will be penalised. And the penalties will go up from $200 to $500 to allow that extra level of compliance and that extra layer of deterrence.
Fed up with rule breakers, police have sought extra powers and are cracking down.
The powers particularly will focus on those people who are not doing the right thing. The power for me to close premises and public places will focus on the businesses who are doing the wrong thing. Thousands of additional police will be in and around the 8 LGAs, Greater Metro Sydney, and still protecting rural New South Wales.
The Minister for Police and Emergency Services, David Elliott, made his feelings known.
The New South Wales Government and the New South Wales Police detest the fact that we've had to increase these penalties and provide extra power to the police force. It is certainly not something that we want to do, and it is in fact something that we cannot wait to shred. But it's quite clear from the overwhelming number of people that are doing the right thing, that same overwhelming number of people have had a gutful of their fellow residents doing the wrong thing. And that's evident by the fact that we are now getting tens of thousands of people reporting breaches through through Crime Stoppers.
With another COVID death, an unvaccinated man in his 80s from southwestern Sydney, the message from Chief Health Officer Dr. Kerry Chant is clear.
I don't think you need more evidence that vaccines will save lives and COVID will kill. So please get vaccinated.
In a tense press conference, Premier Gladys Berejiklian faced questions over whether the government's strategy has failed.
Well, we have harsher restrictions in place than any other state has ever had. But as we know, the Delta strain is a complete game changer and it is so contagious. And we also know that it only takes a very small number of people to do the wrong thing to cause ripple effects. There is no perfect way to deal with a pandemic, and we've been far from perfect. And I would have made that comment 18 months ago. We've been far from perfect.
Sinking to a new low, the state remains in lockdown for at least another month. The New South Wales government wants at least 80% of the adult population vaccinated before life goes back to a pre-COVID state. One epidemiologist, Professor Adrian Esterman, says people should brace themselves for another extension, with the state's lockdown likely to go well into September.
And some of your feedback on the supermarkets. This person says, I supply both grocery groups. These guys have no clue. They think their job is hard and they're under pressure. I have never seen a more sure thing than owning a supermarket. In many towns and suburbs, it's not a duopoly, it's a monopoly, this listener says. Another person's got in touch to say it's no coincidence that many of the new entrants to New Zealand's rich list are supermarket owners. Take a look. Well overdue for an anti-competitive practice crackdown and ending the food chain duopoly, says Peter. On the subject of immigration and Nick Trubridge's story, this listener says the way we're treating immigrants is a disgrace and an embarrassment. What is the government thinking? Another person agrees, saying take a vote on the immigration department, care and empathy of others. I have no confidence in this department. I think it's a culture thing and needs to be changed from the top. On dogs in Blenheim, dogs are not people, says Mike. Leave them at home. That's almost all we've got time for, but ko te kaupapa tuatahi a popo on First Up tomorrow from 5 a.m. Our sailors and rowers taking to the water in Tokyo. Could we be in for a gold rush? Well, let's hope so. Ki kino, Kerry and Grace, the rowers bringing home our first gold medal, or tohu toa matamua, and Tokyo. Awesome job. Awesome job. Our first gold medal. Hopefully there's going to be a bunch more. Kia pai tōpō. Have a wonderful evening. Hopefully you'll be tuning in and watching what else is going on with the games. And don't forget, you can catch up on all our stories online. We'll be back tomorrow.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Trans-Tasman bubble will close tomorrow at midnight as planned. As the number of COVID cases continue climbing in New South Wales, the state has requested army support to enforce restrictions. The Commerce and Consumer Affairs Minister says New Zealanders aren't getting a fair deal in supermarkets, but the government has to consider a response to a report from the Commerce Commission. And New Zealand's first gold medalists of the Tokyo Olympics, rowing pair Grace Prendergast and Kerry Gowler, will be out on the water again today, preparing for tomorrow's final in the eights. Our next news and weather is at 7.
This week, as the Olympics unfold in Tokyo, Our Changing World speaks to researchers about a condition that has been impacting athletes worldwide. What effect does it have on these athletes? And why is it so tricky to fix? Follow Our Changing World on Apple Podcasts, Spotify,